Hello viewers, in this video I'm going to show you how to run WSO2 Micro Integrator in a Docker container. Basically, WSO2 Micro Integrator can be running various different infrastructures and in platforms. For example, you can run it in your local machine, you can run it in a data center, you can run it as part of a private cloud infrastructure such as in AWS, Azure, or GCP. You can also run it in a on-premise environment within a Docker container, and then of course you can put it in a Kubernetes container management platform as well. So in this video, I'm going to show you the very first step that you might have to take when it comes to running WSO2 Micro Integrator in Docker container. So I'm going to run that in my local machine so that I can keep things simple and you understand the options better. To run WSO2 Micro Integrator, previously WSO2 had several options. For example, you could run it by pulling your images from the Docker Hub repository, but recently WSO2 had made a change when it comes to running your Docker containers using Docker Hub, unless you are a paying subscribed customer of WSO2. So I'm not assuming that you're a paying WSO2 customer for this video. So I'm going to show you how you can run WSO2 Micro Integrator if you're an open source user. But this method will also work for anyone who wants to subscribe and become a WSO2 customer at some stage, right? So at this point in time, WSO2's website looks like this. So first thing that you want to do is to download the binary uh, to your machine, and that's what I'm going to do and show you how to do that. So if you come here, you can go to the product section, or you can look at this particular section as well. So if you go to the product section, go to integration column and micro integrator, and it's a micro integrator. You can just download the latest zip archive. I have already done that thing, so I'm not going to show you, but just in case if you want to do that, you can do that, right? The next thing that you want to do is, if you want to run it, run WSO2 micro integrator in Docker file, is to go clone this repository. So if you go to github.com/WSO2, under WSO2 organization, you will find all WSO2 product repositories. WSO2 products are mostly open source, so you will be able to see the source code of all those products under the WSO2 organization under GitHub. For Docker repository, you will have to clone Docker -ei repository. Again, I have done that already, so I'm here, right? So here you will find a README file. Of course, you can go read that, what is there. So it's basically says per profile Docker resources for WSO2 integration, 42x product profiles. So under 42x, there are different profiles such as the micro integrator, streaming integrator, and micro integrator dashboard. So I'm going to focus on the micro integrator part today. And also under this repository, you find Docker images for Alpine, CentOS, and Ubuntu images. So I'm gonna take this Alpine one because Alpine is usually the most lightweight, because as an operating system that doesn't have a lot of packages installed by default, unlike CentOS and Ubuntu, where you will probably have some other third-party repositories installed as well. So for a low memory footprint repository, you might also have to choose Alpine, but it's up to you which one that you choose. This particular video that I'm going to show you and steps that I'm going to show you doesn't depend on which image that you choose, or it should work for other type of images as well. So let me get out of this and then go into this Docker files directory, and then Alpine, of course, as I mentioned, I'm going to do. So you see these three folders for those profiles that I mentioned: the micro integrator dashboard, the micro integrator runtime, and the streaming integrator. So I'm going to just show you this micro integrator part, and you have it here. And then you have a Docker file there, of course, and then a README uh, dot a README file is there, and the Docker entry point.sh. You don't need to worry about the Docker file and Docker entry point. You just need to open up the README file and just read through what it says. And of course, there are some changes that you need to do in this Docker file, which I'll explain while explaining what is there in the README. And so, of course, this says step-by-step instructions, and then it says to clone this repository. Of course, we have done that, and the local copy directory will be referred to as mi docker file home here. And then this important step of build the Docker image, download the mi zip. That's what we initially did, and I hope you have it ready as well. Host and product pack using a web. It says host the product pack using a web server, and then navigate to the Docker file home directory and change the mi dist URL in the Docker file to the URL of the product pack. Now, what I have done is basically, let's say you have downloaded this file and I have hosted this in a Dropbox folder and taken the download URL and put it as the URL in this particular thing. That will work. If you can host it in another web server wherever it is accessible in the internet, then it will work, right? And that's it that you have to do. So I'll just show you my Docker file here. And so I have the Docker file there. Let's find for that particular uh, well, I don't have, I believe I have done it in Ubuntu. So let me just shift it to Ubuntu. Uh, should be okay. As I mentioned, the steps are the same. You can do it in any thing. So let's open it up here. Yeah. So I have this server dist URL, which uh, uh, which I have configured to my download location of that. So if you have hosted your micro integrator instance somewhere else, you will have to replace it there. So one other thing that I did was uh, actually when I downloaded my zip file, I went in and I updated the zip file because I have the username and password. My credentials are there as a sort of a subscribed user. So I have updated my pack. So as if you are a subscribed customer of WSO2, maybe what first step what you can do is after downloading the zip archive, go extract that zip archive, go into the bin directory, and you can update your micro integrator instance, right? I'm not going to show you how to update rather. uh, you can refer to WSO2 documentation on how to do that. So once you do that, it will have the latest updates available in your downloaded zip directory. So once you have that, you can zip it again. You can compress that folder again so that you will have a updated directory or updated binary. And then what you can do is you can then host that particular updated binary in your web server. In my case, I have hosted that in the Dropbox. So what I have there is an updated one. So now the steps will be the same. So let's go into the README file again, and you will see what the next steps are. So what you can do next is you can just copy this thing, and then simply come here on top of the Docker directory. You can do this. So basically, when you do this thing, it will pull your micro integrator, your hosted micro integrator binary, and then do other configurations as necessary. And if you want to see what exactly is happening, you can go through the Docker file. I'm not going to go through that and show the steps what WSO2 has done in that Docker file, but it's a good exercise to do that as well. So once you do that thing, you will have your Docker image built in your Docker. So let me see that I have already done it, so I'm not going to run it again. So you just go in here, you see under the section Docker image ls, you see WSO2 MI tag is 421. It's not the latest one, but the 421 because it's 420. So you see this, right? So it's there. And next thing that you need to do is, now you have the Docker image, you need to run it. So this is how you run it basically. So you can do that again, copy that and simply run it. But I think I already have it as well. So let me see in my PSA. Not sure if I have it. Let's see. Yeah, maybe not. Fine. That should be fine. So let's run it then. So so if I just run this, it's going to take a while and then be fine. It's gonna run it in the foreground. See, this IT hyphen IT is an indication that it's going to run it in foreground, not in the background. Of course, you can run it in the background as well, but for testing purposes, this will work. Now the server is up and running. So now we need to make sure, and it seems like I already have a car file built into this particular uh, deployment. So let us see if I can call that. Yeah. So because my Hello World car file is already deployed, let's try to run that and see how we can uh, invoke. So let me just use this HTTP, and so because I know the uh, URL, that's why I'm gonna invoke it right away, but I can just show you what I have already developed. So this is my integration studio. So in the integration studio, I have this hello world sample, which I just created to demonstrate this particular Docker file deployment. I have this hello world context already. And yeah, so let's go back. So I think I already have that thing. Yeah, yeah, this one. So let's call this thing, it's hello world. Uh, and WS2 has different ports exposed. So when I ran this thing, I exposed 8290 to 8290, mapped it. 8253 is the HTTPS port. So, but for this demonstration, let's use the HTTP, and you see the hello world stuff running. So basically that means our service is running there, and actually I have two different APIs running. There's one that is returning XML as well, so hello world XML. So if I just change, I have needed this lowercase there, and XML, you should see hello world XML responding. So now how do we now in this form, it's just isn't much useful. So basically now I need to make sure I can see and do certain operations. For example, for me to do the deployment, all that is important when it comes to micro integrator. So in the micro integrator deployment, there are a couple of ways you can do it. First thing is you can uh, to do the deployment, of course, you need to there is a deployment directory in the micro integrator, right? So under the home directory, you have a repository, deployment, server, Carbon apps directory. So you have to drop in your car files there. But in this case, I didn't run the Docker image using a mounted container. So one way of doing that is to do using a mounted container, and that's how you will have to do with the micro integrator. But before we do that thing, another way is maybe to get information about what is there, what is being deployed in the micro integrator. You can do, or you can also run the micro integrator dashboard one. So I showed you the micro integrator dashboard container. You can configure that and connect it to this container. So I'm not going to do that thing, but I'm going to use the management API. So if you go to WSO2 website, you see this section called the management API. Using the management API, it is secured by the JWT token, and you can uh, log in first at this particular port number, and then take an access token, and then invoke this particular API resources to get information about your endpoints, your APIs, and so forth. So get users, all that, right? And you can also add users, remove users, update users, get roles, add role, and so forth. And so get proxy services. Uh, yeah, so I don't have much proxy services here anyway. Let's see, get Carbon application. Again, I don't think I have a Carbon application, but we'll see. We can invoke this and see. But before we do that, we need to expose this 9164. So that's what I'm going to do next, right? So let's go here. So let's stop this. And when you do this thing, basically, if you go back to Docker PS, of course, you won't see that running. And even Docker PS -a, this is what I checked earlier on. Because we started this in the foreground, when you stop it, it won't even have your Docker container saved, which is fine, which is good for testing purposes. But here in this case, we need this particular port exposed as well. So we need, let's do that and see. 9164 and 9164. Okay. And I believe that's correct. Fine. So then let's start this, and then we'll try to get some of those APIs called. Okay, seems like it has started now. So let's go back and then try to get our uh, token. So I'm going to copy this and then go here and then come here, and you see this particular basic authentication authorization header should be passed on with a base 64 encoded value of your uh, username colon password. Now this value is for admin colon admin, because there is a default value for that. So when I do this, let's see what happens. Yeah, so I do get a token. So now this is the token that I need to copy in other operations that you see here. So let's say you can invoke, let's see, what is this? So it's trying to find the inbound endpoints. Let's try to get all the, maybe get users, right? Get users. So let me copy this, and then, and you can put your token here. Uh, Copy from here to here. Maybe. Uh, okay, so this says the user management is not supported with the file-based user store. Please plug in a user store. So because we just ran a default micro integrator, it has a user store, but it is based on a file. So file-based user store, but WSO2 Micro Integrator also supports LDAP-based and RDBMS-based user stores. But this particular API information you cannot fetch for file-based user store. So you'll have to have it connected with an LDAP. So unfortunately, we can't do that in this demonstration now. So let's go and maybe try to call. Uh, so, however, if I just let's say I made one small mistake here, of course you will get a 401 unauthorized. So uh, at least that works fine. So we know that it gets authenticated. So let's try to see the carbon applications. Let's try to get all the carbon applications. So I'm gonna do this, and then token we need to copy uh, this one, correct, up to here, and then I'm gonna paste it here, and yes, that comes back. It says there's only one carbon application and no faulty carbon applications, and the active list is name, hello world service version, and under that you see artifacts, name, hello world XML, and the hello world one. So which is great. So I think when you run it in a container, this is how you can manipulate it. So I can also download my carbon application here, and unfortunately though I couldn't find, I'm not sure whether it is there or not. So you can also see get API. See, you can, let me just use this as well up to here, and then token part, we copy. You should get two APIs there. As you can see, this is how you can get the information about the URL as well. If you don't know what the URL is, this is how you can get it, right? So basically, this is the API the micro integrated dashboard is also calling, so which is very helpful. And uh, okay, so that's all good. So get task, get these are all different, uh, you know, types, different artifact types that's available. You can even restart your server, all that you can do here, get data sources. But one thing that I couldn't see here is on the carbon application part, I couldn't see a way to add a carbon application. That would have been a very good option to have, and also to delete a carbon application. And I don't see why that's not possible. Uh, maybe there is an API which I'm not aware of, right? But hidden. There may be an API for deleting and adding carbon applications as well, but it's not there, so we can do it. So then the only option, if that was there, it would have been pure cloud native, and you could have been just be done with it. I mean, yeah, you develop something like this locally, and then you build your car file, and then you take it there, and it will run it in a container, and you don't need to fiddle around the containers file system, basically like mounting all that. But at the moment there is no other option. But there is another one more option where you can basically from here you can configure uh, a remote application, basically remote micro integrator here, and then from there you can take it. So let's do that next. Okay, to do that, to add a remote connection from my integration studio, I can do it in two ways. First, I can right click here and then add new server. Or there's another way, like you can go to this getting started site and then add a new server. Whichever you choose, that's okay. And then you can expand this WSO section and go to WSO remote server. So this now we are running our micro integrator in a Docker machine, right? Docker instance, which is basically my local system isn't aware of the file system of that machine, right? So it is some sort of a remote server. So usually when you run it in Docker, actually that Docker instance will be in a separate server as well, not in your local. So either way, you will have to choose remote, even if you are running it in your local machine, right? So I choose that, and you can give a name, WSO remote server at local Docker. I'm just trying to make sure that I have a descriptive name. My server host name, you can give that. Otherwise, no, because it's running in my local machine, I have to give it as local host. If it's running somewhere else, you will give that particular name. So in the next section, it says if you're running the enterprise integrator, so the predecessor of the micro integrator is the enterprise integrator, but I'm running the micro integrator, the latest version, so I have to type in uh, again here you will have to replace it with your host name, correct host name, but in my case it's 9164 local host and then management. And then you can do the test connection. Seems like my server is not running. Yeah, so I'll just run it again. Make sure that you have this port up and running as well. And let it start, and then we can test to see if it's connecting. We can do another test here. Now it says server exists. That means my configuration is correct. And you can also validate these, but I'm just gonna go here. As you can see, because it's trying to connect to the first time, unfortunately, I feel like this is a small issue because my server instance should already have this hello world composite, and it should sort of show it in this side, but it's not showing it that way. So what I can do is maybe connect it first. As you can see now, you find this new uh, entry available, and it's already trying to connect it and say starting synchronizing, and immediately changes to started. So which is good news, meaning I can manipulate it now. So from here, the next thing I want to do is to add a carbon application. You have a carbon application created here, and then you can go to right click that and then add and remove. But again, as I said, I feel that this is an issue. However, because I already have, for example, I can show my server running here. As you can see, it's responding with 200 OK. Uh, but here it should be showing me there. So I'm gonna just add this back there, and also show you in this section that it's there. So this is how you add it. So you select your carbon application and then you add it. And then when you do this, it will show you successfully added the carbon application, but it's already there in my case, right? Now, again, if I just call my application service, you get the response. Now, how do you delete it? It's simple now again, right? So you right click, now it shows it's available. Right click and take it off, and then it's just ask whether you want to remove it. I'm going to remove it and go back here, and it's successfully undeploying. Go try calling that again, and you will see a okay. Well, it's still there. Let's see why. Ah, no, it's got deleted now. It got undeployed now. The request came in, but it took a while to do the undeployment. And now you get a 404 not 4. Okay, so this is how you run WSO2 Micro Integrator in a Docker instance and then manipulate it. And there are other ways as well. Now, when this is okay for a uh, development environment. But when it comes to a real production environment, there are a lot of other hardenings to do. For example, as I mentioned, typically you will connect an LDAP. Typically, you might want to manage your users in a database, and and also in for example, even though you can connect it this way for connect it in this fashion, a remotely running micro integrator and then manipulate your car files and stuff, your carbon applications and stuff. Uh, in general, you might want to also employ CI/CD pipelines, in which case this manual step wouldn't help, right? Then what's the option? That's where I felt like having this particular API to add a carbon application would have made the life a lot easier, and a delete, but I don't find it. It might be there already. I don't find it in the documentation, but if it's there, it's great. Uh, Otherwise, to accomplish CI/CD pipelines and all that, what you will have to do is you basically will have to, on top of this, you will have to do a volume mount of one of your local repositories to the Docker repository server deployment carbon application directory where the carbon applications are uploaded. Yeah, that's again for your local testing, but if you are doing a production environment, what you will be doing is you will set up an NFS drive or a shared drive, and then you will mount that shared drive, accessible shared drive to your Docker host to your local Docker container. So I'm not going to show you now that, but that's how you will be doing. Great, and this is a very. I wanted to keep it very simple on how to run a WSO2 Micro Integrator in Docker environment and manipulate your Carbon applications. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this, and also the bell button to get notifications. And I'll see you in another post like this. Take care. Goodbye.